Welcome everyone to episode one of Unboxing AI. This is CARPL's podcast effort at getting some of our friends, collaborators, partners, users, unique perspectives, most importantly, from across the world. Super interesting people working on AI in the clinical realm, the scientific realm, getting all of these folks right in front of you, and yeah, essentially getting some unique perspectives on the world of AI as we have it today. Today, we have Dr. Piyush Mathur and Mitch Goldburgh with us as uh, speakers on episode one. Piyush is a while I will let them give their own introductions. Piyush, besides being a dear friend and mentor, is a intensivist at the Cleveland Clinic. He serves as the head of innovation for anesthesiology at the Cleveland Clinic as well. And apart from that, is a founder of BrainX, which is a community that I'm sure he'll talk about. Mitch is an industry veteran. I think he's been doing radiology informatics since longer than I have existed. So currently runs the Advocate AI program at NTT Data Services and has had a uh, illustrious career impacting various aspects of the workflow over the years. And I'm sure we'll go deeper into that as we talk as well. As a starting point, guys, and maybe Piyush, we can start with you. Why don't you walk us through your background and why is it that you devote the amount of time, energy, and effort uh, in the domain of AI, especially being a clinician, right? What is it that drives you? What is it that you see happen that gets you motivated to spend your quality time on this stuff? And I'd love to go deeper into your background as well, Piyush, please.
Yeah, thank you, Vidur. Thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure being with Mitch over here too. And I was born in India, did my med school there, and then came to US, and I've been at Cleveland Clinic for 20 plus years now, practicing both anesthesiology and critical care. Have also been the quality officer and the compliance officer for anesthesiology department uh, for more than a decade. And my impetus to understanding AI originated after I finished my quality fellowship. And what I found was that all the hospitals were morphing into health systems. And all of a sudden, those Excel sheets that they were sending me had higher number of rows and higher number of columns. And just pivoting those Excel sheets, I couldn't deal with it. I was like, there has to be a better way to analyze data. So I said, okay, what can I do? What can I learn? So of course, there's Google search, and that's what I did. There was no Chat GPT that time, and Google search revealed a term called artificial intelligence. I had like no clue what that is. So I said, okay, artificial intelligence. What do I need to read about it? And it searched and found this Peter Norvig book, which is the Bible for artificial intelligence. So naively, I ordered the textbook of AI by Peter Norvig, and it came like with a thick bound still in my library over here. I started reading from page one, and I realized I have no clue what they're talking about. So that started my journey in trying to systematically learn about it, and learned that there are two parts to it, which is the computer programming part, the coding part, which is the expression of this, the math and the statistics that goes behind AI, and then learning that part too. And over years, grew by learning, by collaborating with some of the people who know this field better. And here I am with forming our own entity called BrainX, which has a BrainX AI research lab researching AI implementation in healthcare. And at the same time, was joined by a few of my partners there, Dr. Frank Pepe, Kamal Maheshwari, Yas Sivinsky, and Ashish Khanna, who were all interested in this space and have been working with us. And then subsequently with Raghav Avasti and Shreya Mishra, who or PhDs in AI in healthcare. And there were all these questions that are coming up about, okay, what does it mean to apply AI in healthcare? And that's where we formed the BrainX community. It's a 5,000 plus member international group where we share scientific information and collaborate. So it's been a very exciting journey. We have been in this space for quite some time, but it all started with trying to understand and trying to see how we can transform healthcare.
So that's super interesting, Piyush, to go from pivot tables to AI to BrainX. Yeah, it's yeah, can you talk a little bit about how BrainX has changed over the last 2-3 years, especially with LLMs putting the power of AI into everybody's browsers, and like how has uh is there some unique insight that has come to the fore over the last 2-3 years? Um, given that you've been doing it for, as you said, more than a decade now.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because when we started working on health on AI and healthcare, my primary focus was not imaging. It was mostly text data and tabular data. And that's I was learning NLP techniques, and then transformers came, and then transformers transformed everything, and then all of a sudden BERT was being heavily utilized by us, and then Raghav and Shreya, who have strengths in NLP techniques, they joined us, and we have been doing great amount of research work on applying these tools and techniques to healthcare data and seeing how it can be utilized and how AI can be implemented using this kind of data. So we were actually not much in imaging space at all, whereas rest of the world was moving forward all on imaging space. You think about 600 plus approved FDA applications, 95% plus are all imaging. That's where everything was going, and that's what we found in our year-end reviews too. Majority of the research work and the publications that have been coming about for AI and healthcare have been in imaging domain using imaging data. But we were in this different space. And all of a sudden, November 2022, Chat GPT hits the world. And all of a sudden, we said, hello, world. And it was our moment to shine because we had been in that space and now we have these better tools. And it has completely transformed us because we have been researching, we had been researching the space, and now we are trying to see how can you use all these different tools to improve healthcare. And now at least I have a basket of tools because previously we were limited by what we had. I remember the days where we were using NLTK and the regex only, and then the birds, and you're struggling with the semantic queries and other things. And now all of a sudden with LLMs, it's a completely different world for us. We're very excited about it.
No, I'm sure. Did you finally manage to do pivot tables with AI?
No, we are not. I stopped pivoting tables. I stopped doing that.
Oh, cool. I have a bunch of questions to ask you, Piyush, on a lot of what you said, but I'd love to switch over to Mitch now. Mitch, I think you're from what I know, uh, it would be would love for you to introduce yourself, give us your background, and maybe as you give your background, I think just given the amount of time you've spent in the industry, just even outside of AI, like uh, I think your career essentially represents the transformation of radiology itself, right? And you've been at the cutting edge all throughout. Uh, yeah, would love to understand how you have progressed, how the industry has progressed, and why you're doing what you're doing today.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to extend my appreciation for the opportunity to be with you, Piyush, and for the invite that you've given me, Vidur. Um, yeah, I started early on at a company called Philips. Was my first imaging company, and they were introducing this transformation of film to digital radiography, and it was really my first opportunity to um, understand the process of radiology because we were now in discrete pixels, right? Everything was discrete and it was unstructured data, and we had to move it on networks that were um, eerily slow. We were
Mitch, can you
able to.
can you can you double click on that? What do you mean discrete pixels?
So the concept of it's very much like music to me, right? Music came on these vinyl discs called records, and everyone understood them, and you liked the pop. And Piyush, we lived with the art of overplayed and, oh, this is a brand new album. Wait till you hear this. No pops, no clicks. So when digital radiography was emerging, everyone was questioning, and just like in AI today, right? Oh my God, we're going digital. It's a new technology. Is it as good as the original film, right? And the film was, the size of the pixel was the X-ray photons that were hitting the phosphorus plate that was glowing, but it was still fundamentally discrete, but so impossible to perceive as a discrete elements. Whereas pixels, if you zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and manipulate them as you can, it now gives you that sense of, um, well, maybe it's not grayscale, maybe it's the density of pixels. So I needed a different density of digitization for chest than I needed for mammography. And it Same thing with audio, right? I need that spectrum where I really can't hear in the kilohertz range or in the low frequencies, but if I don't have it, I miss it, right? And I think, for people who have a gift, especially in diagnostic imaging, where they can look at an image like an artist and get an impression, just get a feeling that it's a normal or something's not right in this image and spend more time. Uh, That's the gift, right? And it's always excited me through the years that I've worked in different areas, whether it's be video, digital pathology, the sensitivity to color variations, the concept of being trained to look at digital pathology with different stains and how your mind memorizes these things. It takes the whole world of artificial intelligence to a whole new level when you put color to it, right? But it gets back to what I think, to come back to what you said, Piyush, right? It's all about how the data is prepared, right? If you have tons of columns and tons of rows and you have to figure out how to assimilate it, um, how do you get all this digital data together in a way that can be consumed in something that makes sense? Apologize. So
No.
I think um, there's a lot of analogies, whether it be music and that gift that people have with music, Piyush, right? I don't know.
Mhm.
Do you play an instrument, or anyone in your family gifted with music?
Yeah, my mom happens to be a retired professor of Indian music. She's a PhD in that, and
Wow.
she was a TV artist too. So I do understand music a little bit.
Right? But it's a gift to. I mean, it's one thing to say
Yes,
that I don't like this color, I don't like this artist. That's a good or
that's right.
bad. But to understand the art and impression, much like diagnostic imaging, right?
That's right.
So when you think about artificial intelligence, uh, it's the art, right? It's duplicating the art. When we were first going digital, we were looking we did a study on tracking people's eyes as they read films to see if there was a pattern on how images were read that led to errors or omissions, right? And that was a long time ago. And today, what are we discussing in artificial intelligence? It's the transparency of how is this artificial intelligence making its decisions. So it's been a great journey for me in particular, but certainly in what you described with your journey, um, it's history is repeating itself, and it's a very exciting time.
But Mitch, why AI today, right? Why spend uh, all your time, your effort, your energy on uh, on constantly bringing the newest thing in, right? Which is AI today, and then we don't know what it'll be tomorrow. But Is it just intrinsic motivation, or why do you do what you do? I want to learn about Mitch, right?
Oh gosh, Piyush said he had a problem, it needed to be solved, and he took the initiative to research and learn. And uh, I in no way want to say that I'm the same, but I have a similar passion, right? If there's a problem, I want to figure out how to approach it. I have tremendous admiration for anyone in the medical profession. I come from a family of doctors. I just couldn't. I'm an engineer by training because I like the binary decision of 1 + 1 = 2. And when someone says it hurts when I do this, that's the art of medical care, and that's really special.
And so from what I gather, back in the day, you had to prove that the quality of a digital image is the same as the quality of film. Like, did I get that correct?
Yes, so I don't think I think the statement, and Piyush, I think you could help me with this definition. It wasn't necessarily the equivalent, just like a CD versus an album versus a live performance isn't the same, but is it functionally sufficient, right? Drawing, maybe overburdening the analogy of music, but I mean, if you aren't able to miss the diagnosis, no matter how small the anatomy, whether it's film or digital display, then it should be sufficient. What artificial intelligence is pointing out is not that digital is insufficient, it's the human perception, right? It has variation on its ability to detect things, right? I think that's what it comes down
Yes.
to. Even in anesthesiology, when you have all of those waveforms, and the anesthesiologist has that NASA kind of like control center of BP and body temperature and respiration and all of those uh, um, things that are being monitored, something doesn't look right in one of the waveforms, and it triggers something when you're looking at it, and you're not
That's right.
right. It's
That's right.
that's what it's all about, right? It's the assimilation of information. Um, and sometimes you could have predicted it earlier if you had AI, but it doesn't mean that you're a bad anesthesiologist.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
Is that
Mitch,
fair?
it's yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I think it's those patterns
Mm-hmm.
that we look at, that we memorize, that we get trained on. Those are the ones that we pick up many a times. But I think
Right.
what AI brings for us now are
Mm-hmm.
the patterns that we didn't recognize previously. So what I'm seeing these days are some of these different patterns that we either can't see or can't compute or could not have research because the volume of data is substantially different at a different scale. Uh, to give you some examples, like think about like the EKG waveform. It has a lot of information in there, and there's enough research now to to infer from that what the ejection fraction of the patient is. Now, there are some features there that we have known, but there's so many other features that we are now discovering using AI, which we couldn't have done previously because it was just computationally challenging to do something like that. And then the learning part, as you provide it with additional data, with additional things, it's learning and giving you additional information. That is pretty transformative. So I think Mitch, you're right. Like I think it's one thing to get digitized, but again, to apply the science called AI to that is pretty significant.
So Piyush, is it there's always been the specialist, the fellow that could, not sure why, but he could infer things from the EKG, right? That AI perhaps democratizes, right? So that this
That's right.
person, right? I mean, there's a certain um, um,
It is
gain of
democratization.
insight.
I think
Yep.
no, I think you're 100% right. I actually love that word because AI democratizes certain specialist key skill set. I'll give you a great example of that. So for us to use echocardiography, it requires a lot of training. It
Oh yeah.
requires there is board certification exams for that. And same thing for the sonographers, they have to get trained in that and all. And now you're seeing, and there is validation, there is validation of this data too, that there is enough evidence to show that if you have AI-enabled echocardiography devices, that even novices could use it to infer some basic information. Sure, there will be some information that they can't infer right now, but even novices could use that. And then you think about all these places, even in US, you think about trainees, you think about these remote locations, you think about where the specialists are not available or not readily available for us. And if everybody could use this, it democratizes this key skill set that our patients need, and it improves access to better care to our patients. That is phenomenal, and I think that's at core of what drives me, and I guess drives you, Mitch.
It does, but I think we can't confuse the ability of AI to look at medical data with the large language models that is now
Yeah,
that are available that can go into WebMD, Wikipedia, and give in other words, democracy can only go so should
that's
have
right.
some guardrails, right? It's not,
That's right.
it's not that, oh, I had this pain in this location of my body, and these are the possible outcomes. That's just that's a little too far. But yeah, no,
But
it's
on
please.
on the point of the dangers of democratization, if I may say it like
Mm,
that, over democratization. I think the way I think of it, we're already there, right? We've been there since at least 10 years, ever since, or 10, 15 years, I don't know, since Google existed, right? Since Dr. Google, the bane of the existence of most general practitioners and doctors, ever since it existed, because frankly, if you think of it, uh, LLMs are nothing but, instead of 10 blue links, you're getting a description of with what's within those 10 blue links, right? So
mhm.
I think that is less of a new concern. I think it's a pre-existing concern. The challenge is the confidence with which an LLM gives an answer, right? Which I think like all of us in the healthcare industry are very aware of, that, just the confidence with which, and whether it's Chat GPT or whether it's Bard, this even the disclaimers seem so made up when you look at them, that it's very easy to fall into that trap. Uh, you know, uh, we use ChatGPT and Bard for market research, and sometimes it's like, who is the CIO of so and so health system? It'll just make up a new name, and
Oh my gosh.
it'll make up a LinkedIn profile URL that will not exist, and just the underlying confidence. But I guess that's a journey, right? It's just been a year and a half since these things came to the fore. There are guardrails being put in every day, but I think,
But Fitter,
yeah,
if I may, th-
yeah,
there was there's a confidence that when you go to your primary care physician, right? My grandfather carried a black bag. He went to your house. His insights and information was because he knew your father, he knew the family history, he had all of that EMR data already in his head, and he assimilated it. The difference here is in what you're saying is a degree of confidence that I now need to see on a web page, a confidence factor of this thing. Whereas when Dr. Goldberg came into your house, Piyush would go, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here, Harold. So thank you so much." And the confidence factor was there. It wasn't a matter of question. And Piyush, you and I have grown up with the predecessor to AI, which were algorithms, right?
That's true.
This is Google Maps in the hospital setting. you have scheduling, right? You have algorithms that reconstruct images. You have all sorts of things that I think people don't appreciate how much AI is already there in healthcare, right? Um, the whole value-based care and population health management, it wasn't AI, it was algorithms, but now it's AI, right? So where where were we and where are we going? I think is what we're both with BrainX and Advocate AI is what we're trying to figure out, right? I don't know that
In,
we have
in
the
fact,
journey or the
just to add
yeah, yeah,
add to that. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the concept of the Tesler's theorem. So Tesler's theorem is it's
yeah,
about like 50 years ago. This guy
yeah,
said
yeah.
uh, AI is whatever machines can't do yet, right? So if you think of it, if you go back to like the 1950s when the term AI was coined, and you would turn up with a calculator, right? They don't even exist anymore, but like those accounting calculators, and you would say that, hey, I can do the square root of 5,758 till like 7 decimal places in half a second. That would be the epitome of intelligence, right?
Hmm.
Whereas today it's math, right? It's not even considered. And if I do this whenever I'm speaking or in a room with people. If you ask them, do they think Google Maps is AI? Do they think Google Search is AI? Do they think Amazon is AI? Netflix is AI? No, right? Nobody considers these things to be AI, even though they may be using the most advanced uh, ML, DL, whatever systems on the planet. So I guess what you're also saying is that there are so many algorithms that 20 years ago may have fit into the definition of AI uh, at that time, and today we just say it's math, right? And it's not actually AI. So uh, because that you look at deep learning based recon on MR or CT, right? No one knows it's AI, right? Nobody cares. It's image enhancement, right? It's not uh, AI till a startup does it and like tries to kind of market it. So I don't know if you guys agree with that framework, but I'm so biased towards it that I see it all around me. Like I'm sure like this is AI, right? My microphone getting like hidden when it's here and coming here, coming in when I'm down. So I don't know. Do you guys agree, or do you have a different point of view on this?
So I think the best AI in clinical space is the one that is hidden. Okay, if you don't even know about it, but it works great for you, that's the best AI. If it has to explain to you that, I am doing this and you have to vet it through and everything, then it's not doing anything different from any other algorithm. So that's what I tell people, that there are so many algorithms already in our workspace. And there's so much of AI already in our workspace. And people say, well, AI is the future, right? I said, yeah, I used to say that a few years ago, but I think AI is the present, and where we're going to go with this is the future. That's the real question about it. And I think it's also about demystifying, demystifying as in people still carry on with this belief that, AI is a homogeneous entity and everything is a black box. That's not true. You and I know that is not true. So there is a lot of heterogeneity within AI, and not everything is a black box. Not everything is not inferable, that you can infer or explain, And the talk about LLMs, yes, LLMs, the ChatGPT came out, and you just see the portal, people using that portal. But with BrainX AI research, we are doing a lot of experiments with the algorithms, with the LLMs themselves, and not just the GPTs, but a lot of different algorithms to understand how can we make them useful for healthcare purpose. And it's even the techniques are different. The models are different. The techniques for applications are different. The purpose are different. The task, the summarization, the Q&A, those are different. And I think there is a lot for us to learn about how to apply them the right way. And those are the series of experiments we are working on. And I think, Mitch, you and Vidur, you pointed out this important part about the responsible AI. How do you make sure that it's giving you not just a random answer, but it's giving you a proper answer? And that is what we initially struggled with when we started evaluating some of these large language models, because at the end of the day, in healthcare, just like Mitch, you said, it's the experts that count in evaluating the response. It's not easy for anybody to just say like, okay, this is the right response. And when we look at how human evaluation is done, we found that everybody was doing this human evaluation differently, or this expert evaluation differently. Somebody was looking at accuracy, somebody was looking at biasness, somebody was looking at hallucination, but there was no singular method. And that was our impetus to develop Humanely, which is human evaluation of large language model yield. And we created a comprehensive framework for evaluating LLM outputs, and we not only developed it for us, but we put it out there. It's on our website, brainxai.com. It's freely available tool. You can take your LLM outputs, you can use Likert scale to evaluate them or have your experts evaluate them. But I think those are the things that we need to consider next, that first evaluate them, validate them, transform them using some of the techniques, whether it's RAG, prompt engineering, fine tuning, whatever you need to do, and make them useful for healthcare. So I am very excited about this. What you see with ChatGPT is just version 1.
Right.
Where this is going to go is completely different. That's what I'm seeing.
I think, Piyush, though, let me challenge that with um, with the concept that even what large language models bring, it still brings a context that's susceptible to not being able to properly understand a new context for the information. What I mean to say is, in a more succinct way, is you can build an artificial intelligence algorithm that does segmentation and absence or presence of something in an image, but if you give it a pediatric versus an adult, the algorithm that's been trained on the adult data set is not going to do as well on the difference on the different context. Look, I couldn't endorse you more. Music and AI are the titles for things that have a plethora of variations beneath the category, right? But in the same way that I can play a woodwind instrument one way doesn't mean I can play all woodwind instruments. So I especially with large language models, I keep reading about how people are coming up with even more refined large language models for more refined purposes. And so it fascinates me a little bit because the scope and scale of large language models by title, right, means that they shouldn't be so focused. They should be large language problem solvers, but in reality, they're really solving one problem. And that's why when we now, like all other industries, Piyush, right, we are creating a technology like the horse that went to the car, where we now have an industry of people that are teaching, that are selling services on how to prompt large language models, right? There's a whole business, cottage industry of people that will do better at some. It's the same way that we had the cottage industry of searching on Google, right? I mean, it was which words and the like. So, but let me follow up with that then with another question. What is it that distinguishes large language models for specific purposes?
Yeah, it's we are trying to learn about that, because sometimes it's the data that they're trained on. So you take a summarization task and you take
So,
a Q&A task.
Piyush,
Yeah,
if I might just add to
Sorry.
Mitch's question,
yeah.
and so that, just to avoid duplicacy, uh, and Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to paraphrase. Uh, how does one, assuming that I have no clue what the model was trained on, all I have is a text box, right? How can I, as a user, figure out whether the model at the back end is a healthcare model or is a general model? or is maybe, I don't know, an automobile kind of AI model. I don't know, what other models exist. Is it a music Q&A model? Like, how
Hmm.
can I, as a user, is it even possible for me as a user to ask like a series of questions, like an interview, right? And figure out who's at the back end. Because if you think of it, I can interview Piyush, the clinician, but I can ask you, hey, Piyush, have you heard Roadhouse Blues by The Doors? And you'd say, yeah, it's a great song. It was in the 70s and one of the most iconic songs ever. And you would still know about it, as opposed to your mom, who would like not maybe Roadhouse Blues, but have a much more refined view on music, right? So it's like everybody has a general opinion on everything, uh, but then a very specific, nuanced kind of. So you may I don't. So you can go through a series of. Is there a series of questions, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so uh, yeah, there is a lot to unpack over there, and I think
Yeah.
one simple way to put it is that's why at BrainX AI Research we're running this series of experiments. I don't think there is a simple way to query what kind of LLM it is. Sure, from the outputs that you get, you might be able to infer that, yes, it's probably trained more on this set of data. That's why it's giving me these kind of results from that. You might be able to infer that, but I don't think there is a simple way to figure that out if you're just looking at the output in the chat over there. But at the same time, I do think that there is there are these specific large language models which have now been created, which are trained on EHR data that will work better in answering EHR data-based questions compared to those that are trained on, say, your Google data or web domain data. So yes, there are these specific models that are coming about. And just because their billions of parameter size is bigger doesn't mean that it'll give you a better result. It doesn't necessarily mean. And that's why we are running these series of experiments to understand how these models behave and what do you need to do to make them to get you the desired result. And the desired result may not be the most accurate result necessarily, but might be the most helpful result that you want. And I think one of the misunderstandings that people have is that the result is given to you in just one way because that's what they have commonly seen with ChatGPT. But you can actually get results with the metadata so that you can then yourself also see whether that makes sense, whether that resonates with you or not. So one of the simple experiments that we have been doing is, for example, developing, using a large language model and asking a Harrison textbook of medicine some of these questions that are there. And it gives you not just the answer, but also gives you, okay, what page number is it at and the context for this so that you can then infer for yourself, yes, I do want to take this. Is it helpful? Yes, it is helpful. Is it most accurate? No, not necessarily. But then you have to also look at what's the current standard right now. Are you going to open up the book and go through the whole thing? Or are you going to take somebody's word for that? But I think there are all these outlying questions that are there that a lot of researchers are trying to address. And I love what you said, Mitch, with the Google analogy, and I think Vidur, you said that too. I think we are in the .com phase of LLMs. I think everybody is doing this prompt engineering. I can make a .com. I can make a .com right now. I think we'll weed through this in the next few years. Newer techniques will evolve, and you'll realize we don't have to do it this way. There are better ways to use these. These models may not remain large. There is enough evidence that even smaller models or using parts of these large language models might be good enough. And I think there is a lot for us to unpack over here. But one of the key things that I feel is LLMs will not solve human problems unless humans solve LLM problems.
Brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So, guys,
So,
I do have a couple of very specific questions for both of you, Mitch. Sorry, Mitch, go
sure.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just want to close out this one issue because I think it's really interesting. So you said two things that are very interesting to me, Piyush. One is that the scale of the large language models, the number of parameters, billions, millions, is impactful but not determinate, right? It doesn't
That's right.
necessarily give you greater accuracy. Um, one of the things in imaging that the human AI, not human AI, human eye, right? HI versus AI does is we look at the EMR data and we say, oh, look, a family history of breast cancer. That will make me look at this image differently, right? And have a, so I think um, the horizon for AI in imaging, which is why I wanted to close this out a bit, right? The horizon for AI in imaging is a little further off because I think AI in imaging has to become, first of all, we have so many diseases to detect already, and it's the FDA is one at a time. But more importantly, I think we need to go multimodal, right?
That's
We
right.
need to
That's
understand.
right.
Imaging needs to adopt something that's not just segmentation and speculation and the way the tumor is. It needs context. So I think it's a little further off, but it's not that you shouldn't adopt it today. It's just it's got a long way to go. So anyway,
That's
that's
absolutely,
my
absolutely, and now that you've said it, I do have to give a shameless plug for CARPL. Uh, we came up with this concept called dynamic thresholding, where it's just you change the classification threshold based on clinical parameters. So the easiest example is if somebody has 104 fever and has a mass in the chest, don't say cancer. Those kind of things. So how can you take like context into and just tweak the classification threshold, being like the easiest thing that is tweakable by a platform like ours, right? Without actually going into the AI model itself. So thank you, Mitch, for that. Piyush, I have one very targeted question for you that has like I have never had the courage of asking, either a ER doc or a intensivist this question, but I will ask you, today. Uh, every ECG machine on the planet has that automatic read that comes with it. Uh, you know what I'm referring to, right? Like it has
Yes,
that like
yes,
yeah. The 12 lead
yes.
ECG, poof,
The
one
the
page.
yeah
diagnosis, it
the
it
12
does
lead
Yeah,
ECG.
diagnose.
yeah,
It
yeah.
has the diagnosis, and
That's
every
right.
doctor I have ever met disregards that completely. So,
That's not true.
is that true?
That's
Exactly.
not
So, one
true.
is that true? And two, like,
No,
No.
what are what is that model? Why are they so often then wrong? Or like what's the nuance behind that, like you would have like a $5,000 ECG machine that also gives some kind of like preliminary diagnosis read kind of thing, and uh, yeah,
I
I've
I
always been
I
curious
don't
about that.
I don't think it is wrong that often. I would
Okay.
challenge that notion. I don't think it is
Okay.
wrong that often. And I think it goes back into the human in loop concept, right? So it is giving me something, and then I am looking at the waveform and I'm taking its guidance, as an advice, but it's up to me to correlate that and accept or reject it. And many times, can it bias you? That's the issue. Let's
Mm,
say if it tells you that this is what I think it is, can it bias you into that diagnosis? Whereas if it was not there, could you have thought of an alternate diagnosis? I think that is a more important question, but I think people look at that, people do take that into consideration. And I'm not sure if it's that wrong most of the time, because most of the time it's normal sinus rhythm or
Yeah, so
sinus tachycardia.
Piyush, you raise a really interesting point. We've got a new class of doctors coming out every year, right? And AI, we've been talking to several academic medical centers about the use of AI for training, right? Did you find everything that was in the image? Did you not find? Do you agree? And there's a couple papers that have been presented on the over reliance, to your point, bias, because I trained on it. I like it. I believe in this algorithm, and it said it's okay. And do I become overly less cautious because the algorithm said it was okay, right? I mean, just like Vidur's intoning here, is there a bias that they're always right or not right? And it's one of those many guardrails, whether large language model or imaging AI. I think we all are
No,
tracking.
and to add to that, Mitch, like it's just the same ECG thing. The first time it came to fore, personally for me, it was a relative. There was a huge scare around a relative having like acute MI, uh, based on that ECG report or something. And I may be getting this completely wrong, but it turned out that the wrong lead was put on the wrong appendage, or like whatever, at the wrong place, which led to, like, I don't know, an inverted rhythm or something like that, and which created like a huge hoopla. And then the cardiologist came and saw it, and he said, guys, it's just the lead was misplaced, and that's why this preliminary read was wrong, which I think goes down to thinking about the implications uh, of AI in the wrong hands, right? Uh, so that was when it first struck me, and then I don't know. Anecdotally, I've just seen them to be wrong, but I'm
So,
glad to hear, Piyush, that they're not
Vidar,
actually that bad.
I have two thoughts on this. One is we need to be responsible. We need to validate a lot of this, just like we have done for drugs or devices over the years. So we have to do that. There's no question about it. But at the end of the day, one of my favorite movies is Jurassic Park, and the quote from that: "Life will find its way." And I believe that when there are enough passionate people and when there are enough resources being put something behind something, I think life will find its way. I think we'll find out what's the right use case, which are the right algorithms to use for what, and how can we improve delivery of care with that. The second thing along with that is I think there are a lot of people who are fearful about it. So I do agree that we need to do it responsibly, and that's why the impetus, and that's why the development of humanly, that we need to validate it and make sure we check it before applying in clinical space. That's what we have done for years. But at the same time, I don't want us to do this with a fear. I want to do it with the passion, with the vigor, with all the energy that, yes, it is a science that is based on data. It's based on maths. It's based on various different stat equations. How can we use it for ourselves? Don't do it out of fear.
That's
Well said.
super insightful. So Mitch, I have a targeted question for you as well. Less about AI, more about PACS. So for those of you who may not know, like listening to this podcast, PACS is essentially, or why don't you tell us, Mitch, what is PACS? When was the first time you implemented PACS, or you saw a PACS implementation, how many years ago, and what was it like? And then finally, what can the world of AI learn from, that initial journey of deploying PACS across a health system or across a clinic? And that I'd love your thoughts on that.
So there's a lot in that question. To quote my colleague Piyush, let me try and unbundle it. So I was fortunate enough to learn about PACS in the 80s. There was actually a very famous fellow that I worked with at Philips. He um, he had developed a specification for a video-based PACS. A lot of some of the imaging technologies that use the inverse of televisions to capture the X-rays and then scan them, and that's how you have angiography, for example, right? And fluoroscopy. But PACS, I think, was much more of a tool when it first came out that was impactful on the human process of transporting information, right? It wasn't necessarily and even today, a picture archiving and communication system doesn't really assimilate information, whether it be, but I think whether it be a large language model or an imaging AI, it's taking unstructured data and putting it into a context for somebody to interpret, right? Certainly PACS was able to get the historic films from the basement much more effectively by pulling it off the disc. And now you had yesterday's chest image and today's, and you could see that the pneumothorax was getting better. But I don't think it's a direct correlation, other than it took decades for PACS to become the standard of care, right? But as we're learning, I think for just looking at other technologies' pace of adoption, it's not going to be the same pace. I think the passion that Piyush was describing around humanly and being positive about the adoption of technology will make artificial intelligence um, more widely adopted as soon as we can figure out um, and move away from the financial ROI to the clinical benefit of the patient, or the human side of it, which is all the physician burnout from repetitive tasks that can be automated. I mean, there's a lot of there's a huge human element here, right? Whether it be not putting my face over the film developing chemicals to PACS, but it's certainly, carpal tunnel, sitting in a dark room for 8-10 hours a day. I mean, there's lots of human elements to this that I think AI can, and in the end, the human that benefits from it all is the patient, right? And that's what we're all about in healthcare.
So, Mitch, if possible, can you share what was the first PACS implementation you saw? Like what site, what hospital? Would that be possible? Do you even remember?
I I I I do have a couple recollections, but I don't think it's worth going back that far. But look, it's the same with AI or large language models in healthcare. I think it started at an academic medical institution, right? Someone was willing to put the rigor, like you said, Piyush, right? It's about adopting technology with rigor, not for the sake of adoption, and
Yeah.
understanding the risks, the outcomes, the intended outcomes was the lead on the right leg, right? All of those things. And that's where it starts. And once you move beyond that, um, it's the progression from the large grant funded academic medical centers to to, as Piyush also pointed out, it's to where healthcare isn't always present. How do I get it out there? So, these portable ultrasound machines that you can now do on your cell phone can bring, healthcare to places that it never, without AI, it'll never be successful. Now you have, people doing ultrasounds with AI that are not only in remote places around the world, but rural places right here in our own backyard.
That's fantastic. As we draw to the close, I'm going to ask both of you, go with Piyush first. Ask you probably the most generic question that is asked to you guys all the time. Piyush, you said that we are currently at version 1 of large language models, right? And you are probably at the epitome of evaluating those language models, creating frameworks for evaluating those language models. 10 years from today, will the GP exist?
GP as in the general practitioner?
Yeah, like a
Oh
family
yeah,
doctor, would that?
I actually have the data for that. So the father of deep
So in
learning,
fact,
Jeff
let
Hinton.
me I'll just maybe add to that question. Sorry. One thread is, will the GP exist, or will a large language model just take over everything that the GP does? The second is, will the specialist exist, or will the GP just keep doing everything that a specialist does? So if you could address that from both angles.
Yeah. So I don't think large language models will exist in 10 years from now. I think there will be different kind of models for sure. GPs will exist and the specialists will exist. Here is the data. Jeff Hinton said somewhere in 2016 or so, stop training radiologists. You don't need to train them because
Right.
it's very clear that AI will do it. You know what happened after? I have the data for that. Highest number of public research and publication, imaging, that is radiology. Uh, Huge demand for radiologists. Radiology Society, RSNA, launched their AI journal after that. They have an AI focused meeting. So the radiologists who have been the early adopters of this and have run with this have actually proven Jeff Hinton wrong, who is the father of deep learning, right? GPs will exist. I think the specialists will exist. But just like radiologists, I think we will graduate from not just reading x-rays to doing this phenomenal procedures that my interventional radiology colleagues do. Some of these procedures previously used to require opening up the skull to put in something in there, like a clip in there for aneurysms. Now they go through like a small vessel and they put in a coil over there. The patient can go home the same day. Imagine that. That's what people will be doing with some of these technologies. They're not going to deliver healthcare the same way, and the patients will benefit largely from that. I think multimodal solutions, that's where things are going to go in the future, and platforms like CARPL that you have built, which enable these solutions to be delivered to healthcare systems. They are the ones that will make it successful. It's not going to be these narrow solutions that are going to solve all the problems. They will still exist because we need them, but it's this enabling platforms like CARPL that will bring about this transformational change in healthcare. That's what I see in the future. 10 years from now, we will all exist. And imagine this. When could you get an engineer like Michelle, myself, who lives in the ICU or the operating room, and you together? AI did this. AI did this. Okay. So 10 years from now, imagine the possibilities.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, Piyush. Mitch, how do you see the role of the clinician, the role of the radiologist specifically, evolve? Right. I know it's the most generic question, but I'm
Yeah,
actually trying to gather
I think,
everybody's
yeah.
thoughts.
No, look, I think to wrap, Piyush and I are brothers of a different mother. I think we have a very similar view on just about everything. I think the physicians are getting to be, if anything, there'll be more specialization, because people will have access to different AI tools. I don't think it's ubiquitous, right? There's not one algorithm, there's not one web page, there's not one large language model, and people's use of the tools will be the same reason there's um, Pella Windows and Anderson Windows and all these different companies that make great products. So I think healthcare is an art, and as long as healthcare is an art, you'll always have physicians leveraging tools. In 10 years from now, I think there will be a lot more as Piyush intoned. I think it'll be delivered differently. I think there'll be a lot more hospital at home. Whatever that term means today will be different in 10 years. Um, the fact that my druggist won't call me every 45 days, tell me he has another 90-day prescription for me, that will go away. So, I mean, there'll be definite, right, Piyush? I think there'll be some definite opportunities where AI can help us all. Um, and it's been a real it's been a very exciting journey, to go from film to AI and seeing what's in the images. And I've had the privilege of meeting you and Piyush today, to gain access to people who have come to this point in on that journey from different angles and share great stories. So thank you for organizing this very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you to both of you. I think I'll close by, you know, sharing my vision of democratization, right? And that's Piyush, to your point earlier. Like, I truly believe that why should a clinician's skill, the level of, say, and I'm going to pick on you only, Piyush, be restricted to the Cleveland Clinic, right? Why be restricted to the Cleveland Clinic? Why not create like uh, a
Digital
thousand
twins.
or 10,000 Piyush
There you
Mathurs,
go. There you go.
spread them
Yeah.
across the developing world, developing world, where
Hey,
that level of
by the way,
expertise.
Vidur, I think next time I want to be an engineer first. And that's what my daughter is trying to do. She's going to do biomedical engineering and then hopefully go to med school, do it the right way. So,
Nice, nice,
yeah.
nice, nice, nice.
Yeah, she will be the creator of the democratization, whereas you are the
Yeah.
validator of the democratization. No, but with that, I think we're all aligned. I a lot of fun doing this. I hope folks who are listening to this also listen in. Do share your feedback with me, the broader CARPL team, with Piyush, Mitch. Like all of us are fairly accessible folks. We're on like LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. Reach out to us. And thanks, guys. This was fun, and hopefully this is the start of something big. So thank you so much.